When we are looking at BGP neighborship and we see active, it may be that the communication in our open message is not comparing well against the config. And I've seen this in the real world where someone typed the autonomous system number. And if the autonomous system number maybe is the router BGP command or with the remote AS keyword of the neighbor statement, if those don't match up with what the far side really is, then you're going to get an active status for BGP. So you'd want to correct that. You might have to rebuild the BGP config or reissue the neighbor statement with the appropriate remote AS keyword. You might also be able to reach that neighbor, but it might not have a neighborship back to you. So that's absolutely possible because both sides have to be pointing at one another. There's no promiscuous neighborship that you get with BGP, unlike EIGRP, OSPF, and RIP. You have to be pointing at the IP address, and you also have to be pointing at the IP address that they're using to reach back to you. And then, I was alluding to this right here. This is a very important deal. If I tell you, hey, I'm going to call you up, and here's my cell phone number. I only want you to pick up the phone right now if you see the caller ID saying this phone number. And then I go to make the call, and my battery's dead on my cell phone, so I have to call you from my landline. You don't pick up the phone because you're saying, hey, I'm expecting it from this phone number, and I'm getting called from something else, so it's probably not Dan. What we have to be mindful of BGP is the fact that your neighbor command points to the other side, but also infers the IP address that is expected when the far side reaches back to us. So here's the best practice for BGP, for at least iBGP. And let's say it's for iBGP, because it's not a big deal for eBGP. You generally neighbor to physical IP addresses, those that are on interfaces. But the best way of neighboring for BGP is to neighbor to a loopback interface. And that loopback interface's IP address has to be advertised into the Border Gateway Protocol process, or it has to be advertised into your IGP. Doesn't have to be advertised into BGP, so I misspoke there. But they also have to, when they're communicating back to us, instead of using the exit interface IP address, the physical interface, whichever the one they use to reach us, they have to say update source loopback, saying, hey, when I generate iBGP traffic to that remote router, let's make sure that it comes from this IP address. That's the one that they expect. And so if you see neighbor statements on one side pointing to the loopback interface, but the other side isn't using update source loopback, well, then you would want to enforce sending from the loopback interface IP address. And that's what update source loopback, 0 or 1 or whatever your loopback interface ID, that's what that is going to accomplish for you.